listeners, it's Jana. Welcome back to Grief Out Loud. Today I'm joined by Nakia Peters-Camille. Nakia is a social worker, a certified grief yoga instructor, a grief educator, and also the creator of Hope, a one-line-a-day journal for the bereaved. Nakia's mom, Hope, died of pancreatic cancer in April of 2021. In this conversation, Nakia shares what it was like to grow up alongside her mom, someone she describes as her soulmate, and how that relationship continues to shape her life, even after her mom's death. We talk about caregiving during the pandemic, the absence of cultural grief rituals in Nakia's community, and how she created her own pathways for support through movement, journaling, and connection. She also shares what it's been like to parent young children while grieving, including how she spoke openly with her 3-year-old son about his grandmother's illness and death. Nakia also reflects on the grief of pregnancy loss and infertility, and how those experiences intersected with grieving for her mom. We talk about lots of things in this conversation: love, legacy, and learning how to live fully while also still carrying grief, and about the ways that people continue to guide us long after they're gone. One quick heads up, listeners, we do reference childhood sexual assault at the beginning of the conversation. Okay, here's our conversation. Nakia, welcome to Grief Out Loud. I'm so glad you reached out to me and that we get to have this conversation today.
Thank you so much, Jana. I'm so grateful to be here. I've been a long-time listener of Grief Out Loud since the beginning of my loss in 2021.
Well, speaking of loss, which losses would you like to bring into the space with us today?
I'm always thinking about my mom, Hope, who died of pancreatic cancer April 2021, which is about 5 years now. I'm also thinking about my uncle who died in May, almost 20 years ago. Just thinking about both of them and the fact that they're together because they were really close siblings when they were alive.
So in a sense, you grew up watching your mom grieve for her brother as well.
I really did. I really did.
I'd love to hear more about your mom, Hope, who you've described as your soulmate. What would you like to share about her?
When I think of my mom, I just think of this woman who was just so relentless and selfless. She, like me, was a social worker, and she really had this knack for just living into her name and bringing hope to everyone. She'd been through many different challenges in life, and she took those challenges to support people and to also be the best mother that she could be. She had me at 16 and started college like shortly after, and was just always there to support other people. And when I talk about her being my soulmate, I just think about the fact that we grew up together. We had many similar challenges. The odds were stacked against her because a lot of the times when you hear about teenage pregnancy rates or teenage motherhood rates, it's not always the best. But she worked really hard to make sure that I had a great childhood, along with my dad. And everything that we went through together. We were like the two sides of the same coin.
Do you have a sense of which, you mentioned that your mom overcame a lot of challenges in her life. Do you have a sense of which of those she was most proud of herself?
I think I would say her childhood sexual assault. Um, she experienced childhood sexual assault from a relative, and she was able to forgive that relative and to really live her truth of having that experience. It wasn't something that she was ashamed of. When she came across people who also had similar experiences, she made sure that told them that she saw them, that she also had that experience. And I remember being a young girl, maybe like 8, and she shared that experience with me just to like build connection and to let me know that things happen, but that you could continue to endure and really overcome them. And so when I also had a similar experience as a child, I knew who I could go to and who would really support me, and it was her. And I had people come to me and say, like, wow, your mom believes you, because they also have similar experiences, but in their cases, maybe their mom didn't think it was true, or maybe their mom wasn't supportive of them. And that wasn't the experience that I had. Because my mom opened up to me and told me her story, I knew that she was the person that I could go to, and that she was going to believe me and support me.
It makes me think of the work that you're doing now in the grief sphere of being open and honest about your grief in the hopes that other people will be able to build a connection and to believe them and see them in their grief as well.
Yeah, I do so much grief work. And part of that is because when my mom died, I really didn't see a lot of support. So my mom is African American. My dad is from the Caribbean island of Grenada. And we had the initial like funeral wake, but after that, there wasn't really much cultural rituals to support my grief. And I find that a lot of that may be due to the fact that when our ancestors were brought over and enslaved, a lot of that cultural support around grief was probably lost. And so I had to build a lot of that within myself, because in my family, it was like, we understand you're grieving, but what else is there to do? So I had to create my own support. So I did everything. Like I did grief retreats, grief counseling, grief groups, meditation, journaling, movement, just anything that I felt could support me, because it was just so heavy. And I did that for like a solid 3 years, because I just knew that my mom was just so important to me, and the love was just so huge that I just needed that support to really help me with my grief. And I just knew that instinctively.
Yeah, and to notice that there weren't a lot of traditions that you could call on or rely on, and being able to sort of create some of those things or turn to other things that you could find. And 5 years out, which of those do you still consistently return to?
It's definitely movement, any kind of movement. Before my mom died, I was a super athlete, especially with running. I competed in many marathons, many half marathons. But after she died, I just couldn't move. Like I could barely walk. Like it was just, the body was just so heavy, and I had to really slow down. So I started with grief yoga, which was developed by Paul Dennison. I think he was on the podcast as well. And that's all about connecting to love, connecting to your loved one through healing, breath, and movement. That was really supportive for me. I became trained in that and began to first like support my family, because they were also like, what do we do? We're feeling all these feelings. So I started to support my family as well as colleagues and people within my community. I also became a volunteer facilitator with Myra Sachs Emotion organization, which is about creating grief movement communities. We walk, run, jog together, and we all take the moment to share about our loved ones. And that was really important to me, because I love running and my mom loved that I run, but I just didn't know like how to get back to it. So I was slowly able to like get back to running through being a volunteer facilitator and walking with the group, and really sharing about my mom, hearing other people share about their people, and receive that support as a volunteer facilitator. And I eventually started running again. I started like last year, and I'm like back into it. But it took some time. It took like 3 years. And I like heard my mom saying at like one of my last retreats, I just heard her say like, Nakia, it's time to like leave the grief retreats alone, like put the grief books down. All I listen to is grief podcasts, like play some music, girl. Like please go and you know how David Kessler says you have to live fully and grieve fully. So I felt like I was grieving fully for like 3 years, like just grieving, grieving. And it was like, okay, Nakia, you need to live fully. Like, I know you love me, I love you, but please go, go out, go listen to some music. And I took that message, but what I did was I was like, how can I support people? Because I understood that I had the privilege. It's so expensive to go to these retreats and to like go and get grief counseling. It's not cheap, and it's usually not in the city of Brooklyn. I usually have to go out to Massachusetts or Connecticut. And I understood that I had the privilege to pay for this. And I thought, like, how can I bring it back to my community to provide the support for people that I know really need it back home in Brooklyn? And so I came back and I just started to offer grief yoga workshops, volunteer with emotion, and even some of the agencies that really supported me providing grief yoga workshops as a volunteer for them, just to just give back to the community, because I know a lot of these non-traditional healing methods are not accessible. You know, usually it's like just the therapist, and sometimes the therapist doesn't have the grief specialty background. Like, because in school we're not always taught about it unless we take a elective.
I'm thinking about what you said earlier of, when your mom first died, looking around and not finding a lot of cultural traditions or grief traditions that were rooted in being African American. And are there things that you're noticing in the facilitation that you're doing now in your community that stand out as unique when you're talking to facilitators who are working in other communities supporting grief?
Yeah, I think, and what I've heard from participants is just the fact that they see me as like the facilitator, like just seeing themselves in me, like just seeing that I'm a Afro-Caribbean woman of color is just like something that stands out for them, because it's like, okay, she's just like me in some ways. And I totally could relate to that, because a lot of times when I was at retreats, I was the only woman of color there. So there's something that's said about just connecting and seeing somebody that looks like you, that has that background, whether it's Caribbean, African American, that kind of just connects us together. Just like some people who will sign up for the emotion group or for grief yoga. And one of the things that they would say is like, oh my God, I saw that you were African American. And I was like, yes, like I need that because I haven't been able to find that. So I think just like seeing the person is one thing that allows them to connect and really feel seen themselves.
To have that, yeah, that shared experience, that representation is so important.
Yeah.
Can we go back for a bit to August of 2020 when your mom was first
Mhm.
diagnosed with pancreatic
Mhm.
cancer? It's kind of the height of the pandemic. And I'm wondering, what do you recall about those early days after her diagnosis and then stepping into sort of into a caregiving role during the pandemic? What was that like?
Yeah, so I had a 3-year-old son, and I was still working as a school social worker. I also was a community psychotherapist at a community health clinic, and a lot of my clients were experiencing grief. And I remember when she told me about the diagnosis, I just like went out for a run because I could just feel like my body just like changed. And I like ran to my grandmother's house because we were the only two people that she shared that with. And I kind of was like, we gotta like get together. It was just that fight mentality. Like, we're gonna take it one day at a time. She's super young, so we're just gonna support her as much as she can. And that's all I did. Like, I know there was so much going on during the pandemic, but I was not present to any of it because my focus was just like work so that I could like survive and take care of my family, as well as my mom who stopped working. And then I have 4 other siblings to like support as well. So it was just work for survival means, and her, like taking her to appointments and being there for her emotionally, really trying not to cry in front of her because I knew that she was like what she was going through. I can only imagine. And I didn't want her to like feel that extra guilt, sadness by seeing me cry and supporting her. So it was really just being there for her in all ways that I can, being a mom and a wife to my husband, and working. One thing that I really appreciated during the pandemic was that I did get to work remotely for a few days. So that gave me time, like more time to just sit with her while I work, just to be in her presence and to just talk and to just like take her to appointments on my lunch break and things like that, because we had that flexibility working remotely. We did get to spend a lot of time together, just hanging out.
Speaking of those conversations, as things progressed with your mom's illness, and I'm just thinking of her background as a social worker, your career as a social worker, were there particular conversations that the two of you had about end of life and grief, and are there conversations you didn't have that you now wish you could have had?
Yeah, definitely. So we didn't really talk about the worst case scenario, like what could have happened. And as I look back, I don't think she wanted to talk about it. As things progressed and things weren't getting better, um, it was kind of a shock because we were just, when you're a caregiver, when you're getting cancer treatment, you kind of take it like scan by scan and appointment by appointment. So when things took like turned left, like there was no way for us to speak because she really lost her ability to talk. And let me get a little emotional here, but I remember the hospital like calling me, asking me to come to speak to her because, she signed the DNR and there was no other treatment that could be done. And I so wanted to like make sure she knew what was happening. So I kept saying to her, like, do you understand? Like, do you know what they're saying? She would give me a little smile. So I do believe that she like knew what was happening. But, if you've had that experience of sitting with someone as they deteriorate and they die, you see that they start to lose consciousness and they don't really form like coherent sentences and things like that. So she really started to decline rapidly. And so we didn't really get to like confirm that, she knew what was going on and she understood, and we didn't really get to have any end of life conversations like you see in the movies. They get to talk about things and, like, what should I do? What should I do in life? What are the last things you want to tell me? So we didn't get to have any of those, but I'm grateful because I had those conversations with her in life, just in general, just by being her daughter. And so I'm super grateful for that. And I think that, she as a dying person just didn't want to, didn't want to have those conversations. And I totally respect that now as I look back.
In that same realm of talking about grief and talking about death, your son was pretty young. I think you mentioned he was 3. And how did you talk with him about his grandmother, her illness, and then after she died?
So my mom was an important person in my son's life. She was another caregiver for him. And so as she got sick and she couldn't like pick him up from babysitters and things like that, I like told him like she has cancer, and I explained that it's like an illness, but it's like not like a cold illness. It's something that, could really cause her to have her organs fail. I kind of like explained that like she could really die. And I was really blunt, and it was just I don't know, it was just something in me that just said to kind of like talk to him like this, to kind of like let him know. He didn't get to visit her in the hospital because he wasn't allowed. But when she said that she wanted to come to my house for hospice, um, he was there. And so the night before she died, I kind of had a feeling that she was gonna die because her breathing was just decreasing. And so I said to him, do you want to say anything to grandma? She may die tonight. Like I just said this to him. I said, like, she might die tonight. You want to say anything? You want to give her a hug? And he did, and he said, I love you, grandma. And she was not responsive. But he did give her a hug and he went to sleep. And she did die that night. And when he woke up, like the first thing he said was, did I miss grandma die? And I said, yes, like, she was gone then. I was like, yes, she died. And so he had his emotional reaction and I hugged him, and he has been through this process with me. And, sometimes I have relatives that's like, how do you expose him to all of this? But I'm like, it's life. Like, this is what happened. Like, and this was somebody that was so important to him. So he did go to the funeral. He goes when we visit the grave. But we still have those conversations where he's like, "Can I take her out of there?" Like, and I'm like, "No, remember when we die, our body is no longer working." Just like re-explaining that. But something special has happened, and now when we go, he like brings flowers for her, but he also brings flowers for the graves around her. Like he's like, they deserve flowers too. There's somebody next to her named Deborah, and he's like, "Oh, Deborah's family. I gotta bring Deborah flowers. Like, I wonder how Deborah's doing." Like, he's like all about everybody in like this community my mom is buried in. And it's like he just has like that inner knowing now through his experience. And he's been through like grief counseling and grief group. He went for like 2 years. He stopped when he was like 5 or 6, so maybe 2, 3 years. He's been a part of the journey as well.
Are there ways that you see your mom coming through your son?
Oh, yes. One thing that really stands out is that she will say that he's like nuts in a good way. Like he has so much energy and just this curiosity for learning. And she was just like that. Like she went to school, like she did decide on social work, but she had a degree in psychology and journalism and she tried nursing. Like she did so much. And he's so much like that with the different sports that he plays and the different things that he's excited about learning. I think like they share just that curiosity and that excitement for life and for joy. And I definitely see that in him.
One topic that comes up a lot for folks in your situation is you're grieving for your mom, you're parenting your son, and trying to
Mhm.
find like what is the mix or the balance of having my own grief feelings, being there for my kid and his grief feelings. What do I show? What do I not show? Like I'm getting the sense you're pretty open, but I just wonder if you wanted to say a
Mhm.
little more about that.
Yeah, I'm pretty open and I that's all my mom because she was pretty open. There was nothing that she experienced that I didn't know. It really like brought us closer together and also taught me like just the importance of like being honest with your feelings, being open and building connection. And so like there were definitely times when I would get emotional, of course, when I was parenting. I still do get emotional. And one day my son said, like, Mom, it's okay. I miss grandma too. And it brought us even closer, you know? So I don't regret it. And it's just something that I took from her and her parenting. And I want to be the mom that she was to me, to my kids. I now have a daughter who I named after her, Hope. And I want to be all that she was to them because I'm just so grateful to have had her, as a mom.
Speaking of mothering, Mother's Day is coming up pretty soon, and this will be,
Hmm.
I think, the fifth Mother's Day since your mom died, or maybe sixth. And I wondered if we could talk a little bit about what is it like to be a child who's grieving their mother, a parent who has a child who is two children now, so you're being
Yeah.
celebrated as a mother. And another part of your story is a pregnancy loss and grieving for a child
Yeah.
that isn't here. So I just wondered if, there's a lot of people listening who it might be their first Mother's Day or their fifth or their 15th. And like, how have you approached the day? How have you navigated it?
Yeah, I learned that Mother's Day was originally created for moms who have died, like to celebrate moms who have died. And I didn't know that, of course, until I lost my mom. What I've learned is that I give so much as a mom, as a social worker every day. So on Mother's Day, especially, I tune in and I listen to like what I need. So every Mother's Day is different. I don't plan anything in advance. And I like tell my husband, like, let's see how it goes. He's really respectful of that. And however I wake up, I allow the day to go as it is. So there's some Mother's Days where I'm just like in the bed. There's some days where I want to go out to the grave. There's some days where I want to spend with my family. I just kind of like wait and see and I let it flow that way. Like year 5 has been really interesting. I had a birthday earlier this year in January and I didn't expect to like be feeling so griefy that I didn't want to celebrate my birthday. I didn't want anybody to tell me happy birthday. I didn't want anything because I just felt like, you know, my mom isn't here. Like I just didn't want to celebrate. And it was really similar to when I had my third child. I was not wanting to celebrate that. I didn't want to have a baby shower. I just felt like this immense loss with her absence. But I found that I have so many people that love me, and I think that's what I've been learning more and leaning into is that yes, my mom love me and care for me in her unique way, but I still have so many people here that love and care for me that I got to make space for. And in both instances, I had my family throw me like a surprise birthday party, and then my coworkers threw me a surprise baby shower. And it was like, aha, it's like I know this, but just to see like there are people here that still love you and celebrate you. And it's like leaning into that living fully. So I try to make room for that on Mother's Day too, like to be celebrated, but I don't push myself into it because, I'm a mom, but I still have little Nakia who misses her mom every day. She was my biggest cheerleader, like every day. And so I try to make room for her too.
So just taking the day as it arrives, waking up into it to see what you want to do. And then also, it seems like
Yeah.
there's a big part for you has been my mom loved me in this very unique and special and specific way. And I will always miss that. And can I open up the door to other ways that people are loving me and making sure I'm still available for that?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Speaking of 5 years, you just had the 5 year anniversary of your mom's death, and it sounds like you had planned an event around that. What did you end up doing?
Yeah, so I planned a memorial picnic. So we went out to the grave. We had food, we shared stories. I created this like jar of like memories or for words. I literally printed like all the things she said on Facebook that mentioned anybody, like me or a family member. And I cut it up and I put this in this little jar so that people could pick it out and just like read something that she said about them, like just giving thanks to them or love to them so that they could connect with her through her own words, as well as like creating a scrapbook and like sharing that. So I really just created the space for my family to come together and to really celebrate her and the life that she lived.
Is there one particular phrase from the jar that stands out to you today?
Oh my God, there's so many. Um, One thing she said was like, I don't want anybody to get it twisted, but my 5 kids are mine. I love them like so much. Like I don't like they're all mine. Like they're my blood, sweat, and tears. And look, you guys better know. And we felt that. Like me and my siblings, we felt that love like all the time. They say that I'm learning now that I have two living kids about just like the differences that you need to provide each kid. And she lived that. Like everybody was so different and she mothered everybody so differently, but everybody still felt that same love. Though my siblings would say I probably was like the favorite. So felt that love. Like a family joke.
Well, I know we often talk about how grief can be different for every person, even like within the same family. So you and your siblings likely grieving really differently. And then there's how we grieve each of our different losses in various ways. And I was thinking about, grieving for your mom who died and then also grieving for your baby who died. And what
Mhm.
have you noticed about that grief, the differences, the similarities?
Yeah, when my mom died, I felt like I know that I did like all that I could do. Like there was nothing left unsaid. She knew that I loved her. I was with her when she took her last breath, and I just did, everything that I could do to be with her. But when my baby died, I remember like thinking like, what did I do here? Like, didn't expect to have had a missed what they call it, a miscarriage at 9 weeks, where you like go for an ultrasound, really normal, and then I was told that there was no heartbeat. And so the first thought you have is, well, what happened? And then I also heard from others, like, what did you do? Because a lot of the times it's, people think it's the mom's fault. Maybe they're not careful, or maybe they're really busy, they're not resting, and I was grieving too. So sometimes I thought, like, is my grief connected? I experienced a bunch of infertility issues, and I didn't have that originally with my first son. So I started to wonder, or even I would say maybe create a story about like, is my grief connected to like infertility where I can't, conceive? I had to go through IUI, and it took 2 rounds of IVF for me to have my daughter. I wonder like how is that connected to the loss of my mom? Like if it was, because everything was so back to back. My mom died, then I had infertility issues, and then I had the miscarriage, and it was just no breathing space in between. And I wondered how much of that was due to my own grief, my own health. Versus like with my mom, I knew that that was like outside of my control. Like I couldn't do anything about the cancer.
Mm.
And logically, I knew it wasn't me with the baby, that these things just happen, but you can't stop those irrational thoughts that come up or the things that you hear from other people. And you're like, well, maybe it is this or maybe it is that, you know? So those are definitely some of the differences.
There was some felt aspect of culpability, even if there's
Yeah.
no actual culpability, but you've noticed that sense of, did I do something, or was it these outside circumstances that contributed to it in some way?
Yeah, definitely.
I was really struck when you talked about how your mom's voice came through to say, enough with the grief retreats, enough with listening to the grief podcast, turn off grief out loud, play some music, and go live your life. Are there other times when your mom's voice has come through to you?
Yeah, it's every day, you know, just being a social worker, just being a person that I am. She was such a force of like kindness and empathy, but she also like didn't take anything. Like, you know, she was like, she was not having certain things, but she was so kind and she would give you the shirt off her back. And I really try to embody that, you know, in my work as a school social worker, in my work as a therapist, as a grief yoga teacher, like in everything that I do, I really try to embody those same qualities. You know, I think about some of the messages we got from clients and friends, and everybody just said the same thing. Like, you gave me food when I was hungry, like money for my child, and you had kids of your own. Like, this was the person that she was. And so even when things get challenging, or when I'm having a hard day, I really try to just like tune into her spirit and like what she would do and how she would support, to just be that person, to just give that hope, you know, as she did. I just feel so much pride to be Hope's daughter. Like, I remember I would call her at her job and like, who's calling? I'm like, Nakia, Hope's daughter. I was just like so proud to just say it, because it just gave me so much love and pride to like be her daughter. And I have this honor to just continue to carry her legacy and to provide support to people that I work with, to my family, and to just be that light that she was when she was here.
This relates back to the idea of being a mom and caring for your son, and now your son and your daughter, while also carrying the grief for your mother, and trying to, like, how do I do that, right? And then I wonder, being a social worker and being a therapist, how like early, especially early on after your mom died, how did you manage having your own grief experience while showing up and being there for other people?
Yeah, it was challenging because I swear it was like all my clients experienced grief at the same time as I did. You know, sometimes that happens. And I really had to be intentional about doing my own work, like having my own therapist, making a moment for mindfulness, getting that air going out, like just really taking care of myself so that I could hold the space for people, because it was just so much grief everywhere. You know, I also had like my siblings who were, you know, I'm the oldest of five, but they were all pretty young. Like, they were like first years in college, last years in high school, and they still very much needed support. I'm supporting them, getting them like set up with therapy. Some of them moved in with me, like helping them navigate college, and then clients, and then my own family. I really had to take care of myself. And I think that's why I jumped so much into all the grief support that I did, because I really needed it, because it was like grief 24/7. I needed to make that space to really like process my own grief so that I could be there for everybody else.
It's interesting. We so often talk, like we have our cliche analogies. It's like, put on your oxygen mask before you put anybody else's on, or like make sure your cup you can't pour from an empty cup. But as you were talking, I'm picturing more like a really big bucket that's really full of your own grief. And you're like, I'm not gonna be able
Yes,
to put anything else
yes.
in this bucket if I don't spill some of
No,
it out,
no.
because it's really heavy to
Mm-hmm.
carry. It's sloshing all over. Everyone's going to get wet. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that idea of sometimes what we do for our grief is to give it some space to move and to move somewhere else, so it's
Yeah.
not filling our bucket quite so full.
Yeah, definitely. I felt like I just had to do both simultaneously. Take care of myself while also taking care of siblings, of clients, my family, and just making sure everybody had their sources of support.
You mentioned that you were a big marathon runner, and that's such an endurance event. And now here you are doing like emotional endurance events because that is a lot to do at the same
Yeah.
time,
Yes.
like perpetually at mile 25.
Yes. All the time. Oh my God.
You mentioned journaling being one of the things that was helpful for you in your grief. And I know you have a book, Hope, a one-line journal. And one of the things that you sent me a copy, and one of the things I love about it is it's like for 5 years. So you go back to the same day, and on that same day for 5 years, or probably I could fit more years on there, you respond to different prompts. And I thought, oh my gosh, how magical is this? Because one of the things I think happens in grief is we go through it and then something comes up and we feel just like we did on that first day. And we think, oh, I've
Hmm.
done nothing. I've gone nowhere. Nothing has changed. And then if you to be able to look back, be like, whoa, actually something has shifted, even though it feels so familiar. How did you come to the idea to create a journal like that?
Yeah. So when I was like writing all the time about grief and writing to my mom, I had so many books. They were piling up and I was just going through them weekly. And I thought to myself, how can I like put this together? And also just like the physicality of like having the space to just write and just have it be enough space for everything that you want to say in grief. And so I just came up with this idea of just having like one journal with a question a day where you could just write every year and be able to see how your grief has progressed. Because my mom died 5 years ago. I was 30 years old. I'm now 35. And I thought 5 years ago, like, what is it gonna be like? like 5 years from now? Like, am I still, initially I thought like, am I gonna feel like this forever? Of course, like, well, will I ever feel better? Like, what is my grief gonna look like? This was one of the ways I also cope by creating this journal every day. I like wrote a question. Some of it was based on the holidays, like for Halloween, it's like, what mask do you wear in grief? Because I felt like sometimes I did have to wear a mask, like showing up to work and, supporting others and hearing about their grief, on a day where I wasn't really feeling great myself, or like being a parent and having my own grief. And so I came up with these questions day by day. I would intentionally take time to write and just say, like, what would 5-year-old me like want to respond to, and not have so many books, because there was so many of them, just to like have one, and to be able to just like look back over time and say, I do remember feeling like that, and like look at how I'm feeling now, or like, wow, this is still the same for me, just being able to have that reflection was so important. And it literally came out of just writing so much and like not having any space for like all of the journals, and just looking back sometimes, like I would look back like a year from certain date, like milestone dates, like her birthday or Mother's Day. And I would say, man, how was I feeling? And to be able to have this journal, it kind of like puts everything together for me. And I hope that it does for people who may be interested in giving it a try.
Yeah, I've always thought in my work when I sit with people who are, they're just in so much pain around feeling that sense of, oh, nothing's different. I feel exactly the way I did on day one. And I always
Hmm.
wish we would take videos of ourselves in the first couple of weeks and months of grief so that we could go back to that and be like, whoa, look, now I shower
Hmm.
regularly, or now I
Yes.
can sleep through the night, or,
Yeah,
all
yeah.
the things that really do change, but it's hard to remember because the heartache just feels so ever present in that way.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you write letters to your mom a lot, and I'm curious with year five, what are some things recently that have been rolling around in your mind of like, oh, I really want to write to her about this. I want to tell her this.
Oh my God, so much, but definitely like my struggles with parenting, like it's not easy. I'm like, how did you do it? You have 5 kids. Like, I can't even imagine two. I have a husband who helps. Like, he's amazing. He like is always supporting me. And she was a single mom, for all of us. My dad was very active, but she had 5 kids. And I'm just like, how did you survive? So I'm like always asking her, like, help me, give me a sign that I'm doing this right. Because every day I'm like, am I doing this right? And my son is like such a social worker kid. He'll be like, it's my feelings, mom, and you taught me about my feelings, and so I'm gonna speak up. And I'm just like, oh my God,
What have I done?
what have I done? I still want to ask her, like, what should I do? So I'm always like, give me a sign that I'm on a path, that I'm like being a great mom, because sometimes my kid is like, you love your sister, my sister better than me, the normal things, civil and rivalry and things like that. I also just like ask her about growing up and just building confidence and in the workforce, and as a woman, as I continue to get older, because in many ways I was still a young adult. I still needed her guidance, but now as I get older and older, I'm like, how can I take what she taught me and what I've learned to become who I am? Because that's really what the next steps are for me, like integrating all of that to be who I am with confidence, being able to like, no, this is what she would have said, or this is what she would have wanted, because I have that intuitive knowing and that connection to her always. Send me a sign, and she communicates with me through music all the time. It's always a song, and I'm just like, okay, thanks, appreciate it.
So two big topics. One like very tangible, like how do I do this with these kids? And then some
Yeah.
more like abstract things of how do I continue to meld what I've learned from you and to become who I truly am and to feel really confident in that.
Yes, it's because, I feel like especially women, many people look to their moms, right? Just that figure of like how to be in the world. And she gave me that until 30. And so from 30 to 35, I've had so many people step up, from my aunt, my grandmother, cousins, and they have their own different way, of spinning, which is very different from hers. So it's just like, how can I create, my way with all that I've learned, so I could create a path for my children as well, as they continue to grow and be.
Well, Nakia, speaking of following who you are, if listeners out there want to connect with you, the work that you're doing, find your book, like where would you send everyone?
They can reach me at hopesdaughter.com. They'll find more information about upcoming grief yoga workshops and collaborations that I have coming up. And I really encourage people to reach out.
And listeners, I, of course, will link to all of those things in the show notes. As we close out, Nakia, is there any last bit of Hope's wisdom, your mom's wisdom, that you'd want to share with me and our listeners?
Yeah, I would say just allow yourself to be who you are, in your grief. Like allow your grief to just be. Find your people that could be with you in the grief, and that'll allow it to just come through. And you'll be able to just be more connected, with your people and with your grief. We need that so much in the world, especially with everything that's going on. Sometimes it could feel like no one understands because so many people don't want to talk about grief, whether it's in the workplace or just with our own families. But find the people, because they're out there. There's so many people out there that do want to talk about it, that know how it feels. So find those people, be with your grief, and allow it to be, so that we can all be supportive to each other.
Well, thank you, Nakia, for those lovely words of support around the power of using our own story to open up connections with other people and their story and their grief, which is exactly what you've done today on Grief Out Loud. So thank you for being on the show, for sharing with me about your mom, Hope, and about your baby and your grief and all the amazing things that you're doing in the world to connect with folks. I'm really grateful.
I'm so grateful for you too, Jana, and thank you so much. I know I shared that your podcast was literally one of the first ones that I listened to, and so you've been with me throughout my whole journey, and I'm so grateful for you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you again, Nakia, and listeners. You know, I say this to you each and every time, but thank you for tuning in, for making the show mean something, for sharing episodes with people who might be supported in some way by what we're talking about here. If you'd like to reach out to me directly, you can email me at griefoutloud@dougy.org. It's DOUGY.org. That's our main website, and there you'll find information about our local programming, all of our free downloadable tip sheets and activity sheets, and of course, every episode of Grief Out Loud. I'm always excited to share that the podcast is sponsored in part by the Chester Stephan Endowment Fund. If you're looking to learn more about how to be more grief-informed, you can head to our website and go to the training section, and we have a series of online classes that you can take that are self-paced, so lots of things to learn there. Thanks again for listening. We hope you'll join us again next time.